Hello, my name's Tim Kenny from Tim Kenny Surveying, and recording this video on June the 19th, 2026, just before 12 o'clock. Today I wanted to talk about this morning's announcement from the government, this morning's kind of press release from the government, with the snappy title of Home Buying Shake-Up to Slash Delays, Cut Costs and Stop Sales Falling Through. All of which sounds really exciting, something that, I'm sure everybody in the industry thinks it's a good idea. We all want to cut costs. We want to stop sales falling through. We want to make the whole process quicker and easier for everyone. And so obviously that is what the government is trying to do. Obviously I'm a surveyor. Mostly my interest is in around surveys. It's what I do. It's how I make the bulk of my living. And obviously this announcement, this process, these reforms will affect surveyors. And will potentially bring in sellers surveys. So we'll touch on that, but I want to kind of deal with some of the other bits in the announcement first as well. So what the government have said is that later this year, they will bring in a code of practice to set out minimum standards for property agents and guidance on improving the quality of listings and upfront information in those listings, which again, really good idea. Estate agents obviously they have their reputation, and sometimes that's deserved, sometimes that's not deserved. There are good agents, there are bad agents, there are bad property listings, and there are good property listings. But it makes sense to have a code of practice that kind of brings in the best practice across the industry, clarifies that, tells everyone exactly what they should be doing, so consumers can know what to expect. I think that's right, that's fair, that is how it should be. I don't think anybody can agree with that, or disagree with that, sorry. So they're saying that's by later this year. I mean, we're in June already, so sometime within the next 6 months we should expect that. And that's good news, broadly speaking. Next up then in 2027, or from 2027, so any time after 2026 is what they're saying, there's going to be a consultation on estate agents' qualifications and expanded digital tools. So what does that mean? Obviously, the qualification of estate agents is something that's been rattling around for years, hasn't it? It is fair to say that right now, you don't need any particular qualification to be an estate agent. And given how important they are in the process, I mean, I don't want to bash estate agents. I'm not knocking them in any sense. I do think they have a really important role in the process of buying and selling houses. Right? It is a really important role they play. But obviously, because that role is important, I think it is right that they are competent, and generally that means they need to be qualified. So I think that is a good idea. Some consultation on that, getting an idea of what that should look like, getting everyone engaged and involved in that process. Again, no problems with that at all. I'm sure again everybody can agree with the value in that. Obviously, be interesting conversations about exactly what that should look like, exactly what a estate agent's qualification should be. But broadly speaking, that's a good idea, and having consultation on that is a good idea. The other thing they're talking about is expanded digital tools. And this is that kind of digital process around speeding up transactions and all the kind of digital signatures, digital IDs, property logbooks, AI enhanced conveyancing, all of these things that kind of are all again bubbling around within the profession, within the process already, formalizing all of that stuff and coming out with what works, what doesn't work, what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. So again, those two things obviously are consultations happening from sometime after 2026, so sometime 2027 onwards. Important to recognise it's only talking about a consultation at this stage. Obviously the intention and the desire is there from the government to do something, but obviously that's going to be dependent on those consultations and some other things that I'm going to talk about later on in this video as well. Which then brings me on to the bit I think is most relevant to surveyors, relevant to me as a surveyor and any other surveyor watching that, is this idea of seller surveys. I think it's really important to note, if you search the press release, there is no reference to the word survey. It doesn't say seller survey anywhere in that press release. In fact, if you go back to the consultation document that preceded this, was it September, October last year, when the government released their consultation, it doesn't say seller survey anywhere in that. the word survey really is not, doesn't feature. I don't think it may feature in that document, but it certainly doesn't feature heavily. Obviously had a quick look at the press release, did a quick Control F search, and survey doesn't come up, but they do talk about condition, and I'll read you the section. So it says sellers and estate agents will have to provide key information upfront in sales packs at the point of listing. Anyone as old as me or older will remember home information packs. So this is kind of essentially a similar return. This will set out a home's condition, leasehold costs and change status so buyers can make informed decisions and property professionals can get to work sooner. Right, so it's kind of some of the stuff we would have looked at in the home information pack, but it's this idea of the home's condition that it mentions within this. Again, this is something that was mentioned in the consultation, but again, really, really briefly. It just says some information about the condition of the property. We, as surveyors, have kind of maybe assumed this means a seller's survey, and we've maybe kind of associated it with the system in Scotland, which involves the kind of the home survey, kind of this standardised survey within each of those packs. So we kind of assume that's what it's going to mean in this case. But it's important to note, it doesn't say that. It doesn't say a seller survey. It doesn't say we're going to bring in the Scottish system or something similar. It just says some information about the condition. Now, of course, that could just be this home is habitable or not habitable. This home has power or doesn't have power. That is information about condition, as it's relevant to a property listing. It could be that this property has a gas safe certificate or an electrical installation condition report. Again, that's information about condition. It could be information about fence certificates. That's information about condition. It doesn't necessarily say that it has to be a full survey of the property. It has to be a detailed information about the condition, but it may be. Right? I think it's really important for us as surveyors, anybody who's looking at this and being concerned about it and thinking about what it's going to mean, how it's going to impact them, and getting worried, is to recognise there is no definitive, there's going to be seller surveys and it's all going to be done by corporates or whatever. Right? None of that is within this proposal. We are still really, really a long way away from anything like that happening. The other thing I'll say is I think that from the conversations I've had with various people within this, that I don't think anybody wants to replicate the Scottish system in England and Wales, to which this would apply. They've seen the flaws in that system. It has some good bits to it. I'm not knocking it, but I think anybody who's involved with it, anybody who's seen one of those kind of Scottish surveys, will recognise that they are flawed. Right? There is, of course, also a considerable issue around who provides those surveys, because right now there are almost no independent residential surveyors within Scotland. It has pretty much decimated that market. It is all of those surveys are pretty much provided by corporates, right, who have connections to estate agents and have sold their services to estate agents. And estate agents are obviously the ones instructing the packs on behalf of the sellers, so they're dominating that market. One of the things I think is quite interesting, one of the conversations I had, I'm not going to say who with, but he was saying that his hospitality budget had massively increased as part of the move to the Scottish system, because of course kind of you're buttering up the estate agents with the hospitality budget. That's kind of what they're doing. They're building the relationship. To put it the nice way, you build a relationship with the estate agent. They like you. They think they're going to get a good service from you, and it helps the whole process from that point of view. But of course, that is something that independent surveyors like me can't compete with. So ultimately, we would lose out through anything similar happening in England and Wales. The other side of it is obviously that the Scottish system includes evaluation, and that is problematic, whether evaluation should be provided up front, and it ties in better with the Scottish legal system than it does with the British, English and Wales legal system to have an upfront valuation. But again, it has its issues and people are aware of that. So I think it is reasonable to say that at this stage, I don't think anybody wants to just directly replicate that system in England and Wales. So I can't see that happening. Obviously, there will be conversations ongoing with various interested parties, the RICS, CABE, on behalf of surveyors, but also the kind of the home buying and selling, home buying and selling group or home buying and selling council, I think are heavily involved in this. I mean, I personally have concerns over a lot of this, in that there are clearly organisations, individuals who are seeing this as a commercial opportunity. That's fair. It is going to be a commercial opportunity for a lot of people, but obviously commercial interests do muddy the waters slightly. So whether we get something that actually suits surveyors for all of those discussions, I don't know. I don't know. I think it is. I don't know. There are surveyors involved in it. I think we, as a surveying community, need to make sure we are as involved as we can do. Any opportunity we're given to provide our feedback and our opinion into a consultation process, we really should engage with that, and make our views felt, whatever those views are. And I'm sure within, it is often said that if you get 6 surveyors in a room, ask them for an opinion on anything, you'll get 12 different opinions. We like to have differences of opinion. I think that's a good and healthy thing, and I think we should really engage with that and provide that feedback and make sure we get the best possible result, not just for us, but for consumers as well. Last thing I really wanted to kind of then touch on in this video is it actually going to happen? Right? We talked about, obviously, by the end of this year, we're going to get this code of practice. Start of next year, we might get some consultation, and then by the end of the Parliament, we're going to have some definitive regulations set out, legislation set out. That's fine. That's a reasonable time frame for something like that. But I think what's interesting is, obviously, this coincides with the other big news, I suppose, of the day, well, at least for normal people, was the election of Andy Burnham in Makersfield last night, in the Makersfield by-election. And of course, we all know that means there is now going to be a Labour leadership contest, and certainly Andy Burnham's got a very strong chance of becoming the next Prime Minister, next leader of the Labour Party. I doubt it's going to be Wes Streeting, so chances are it's going to be Andy Burnham. Does that mean there's going to be a change of priorities? Is this, changing the home buying process really going to be as high priority for a new regime? Possibly it is. I can't see that ultimately changing this part of the process. So I would suspect it would still go ahead with Andy Burnham as PM. Whoever becomes PM, it's probably still gonna go ahead. But I think what is interesting about the fact that if we get Andy Burnham as the new Prime Minister, we could well see a new general election, couldn't we? Ultimately, it's one of those things being discussed. And of course, if we get a general election, then that changes all of these timeframes. Everything that can be done is going to go on the back burner, and we get a different party in government, and certainly other parties that may get elected probably are not as interested in bringing in regulation. They're not as interested in bringing anything that might, for example, prevent people wanting to put their property on the market. Certainly, for example, people like Reform are perhaps going to be more interested in a much more free market approach, much less restricted approach to marketing properties. So whether it will survive a change, I don't know. Whether it will survive a change to a new Labour government, I don't know. And that's before we even kind of got into the uncertainty of what type of survey it's going to look like. Who's going to be providing it? Is it going to be RICS members? Is there going to be new qualifications? Would it be different levels of survey for different types of property? All of this stuff that is really a big deal. There's obviously always questions around liability as well, which is something I'm not personally too concerned about. I did a video about it. If I can work out how to use YouTube properly, I'll pop a link to that video with this video so you can see that as well. Liability issue really is not as big a deal as most people might think it would be. But as I say, there are huge questions about what it's going to look like, what it's going to be. But as I say, I think for me, I'm taking the view that, look, this stuff is so nebulous right now, so kind of unclear, and really, is it going to happen? If it does, at best case scenario, we're looking at the regulations for the provision of a seller survey to take place in 2030 at the earliest. Then, of course, there's going to be an implementation process, whether we need requalification of surveyors and everything else, and ensuring there's enough supply. So really, to expect a kind of a compulsory rollout of seller surveys anytime before 2032, if I had to guess, so 6 years. My view is, look, I'm a surveyor, I'm out working, I'm going to carry on doing my job. At least where I am, things seem to be busy, so I'll get on and do what I do, and I do well. And I think for most of the rest of us, that's what I would say we should do. We can't get too caught up in it. There is so many variables. Trying to figure it out is just going to create a lot of unnecessary stress for all of us. As I said, the best we can do is getting involved, get engaged with any kind of consultation process that happens, make our views known to anybody who asks for them. Um, Other than that, it's just everything else we do with our day jobs. Be good at it, get on and do it, learn what we need to learn to make sure we're staying up to date, staying competent, and doing a good job. Um, so that's just my views. What happens, who knows? But we'll see in years to come. Thank you very much.